I quite like to fish poppers. I think it's the most exciting way of catching fish is a popper or a dry fly. And you know, you always try to find nice popper heads or to make your own nice popper heads, but it either takes too long, or you can't get the right material, or you don't have the right manufacturing process. And if you have that, you find that quite often you can't find the hook that fits the right popper. So and that's made me think, and you know, I did some research and find that a lot of people are complaining about poppers and the hookup ratio on poppers, and they find that they would say they only get like a 40% hookup ratio on poppers. And I started thinking about developing a popper that will expose the hook more. And I started with that, and I actually didn't realize that I was going to open a can of worms. You know, it started from simple drawing to buying a 3D printer and 3D software, and learning the software, and then start drawing and taking measurements and making notes. I was still actually learning the 3D software, and I came up with pretty much the design that I wanted. And I printed the first one, and it was way too big. I thought, okay, I'm going to print it for 6.0 hook, and that was way too big. It was kind of the design that I wanted, but it was just totally oversized. Then I realized that I'm going to have to start to take certain measurements on the hook and build them into the popper head. My entire design is based on the shank length and the width and the gape size. So this is totally oversized, and but if I put any hook's shank length and gape into my spreadsheet, it will give me 26 measurements. And with those 26 measurements, you build this shape for that specific hook. So I can take a size 20 dry fly hook, put it in, it will give me the measurements for this shape. When you look at a bare hook, where there's nothing tied on that hook point is exposed to the maximum. As soon as you start to tie something onto that hook, just one wrap of thread, you start to affect the hook point exposure. And the more material you put on the hook, the more you affect the hook exposure. Now, the material can be, the softer material will not have that big effect compared to a harder material or a more rigid material. So I took this shape, and then I said, okay, I need to cut away to get to my design, which is this. And you need to cut away as much as possible to expose the hook as much as possible. But as soon as you cut too much away, you start to affect the performance of the popper. And there's two major things in the performance of the popper. One, it must float the hook that you're using, and the other thing, it must pop and it give you the right action on the water. So the more foam you cut away, the more you're going to affect the floatability of it and the performance of that thing. So you need to start to look at the volume of the actual head. To get back to this shape, what I did was to print half shapes and put glue hooks into them, see if that would work, and then make sure the measurements from the hook eye up and below the hook eye is right, because that measurement must be equal or smaller than the hook gape, and the mounted hook gape, which is from the bottom of the popper to the point of the hook. And that is where I started building, instead of round corners on the top, more square corners on the top, because that there is not really going to affect the hookup ratio. You need to open up at the bottom and then on the sides. You should never have a popper that is wider than the hook gape, because that is actually the measurement that affects the hookup ratio more than anything else. The popper head should always be at its widest, must be equal to the mounted hook gape. Now, mounted hook gape would be the popper on the hook.
It's still got quite a substantial cup in the front.
It's got more than enough in the front to pop it, and they so I made the cup a little bit deeper so that it can grab a little bit more water. It pops very nicely. It will have like a dive effect. You can fish it very, very slow, and pop it within a few centimeters. or you can fish it very fast. The bigger ones especially fish them very fast for GTs. They'll pop, they go down, leave a bubble trail, pop up again. Sometimes they jump out of the water, come back in. On most poppers, I think the eyes are positioned in the wrong place in the popper, and they're always too small. And I quite like a big eye on a fly, or whether it's a GT fly, a streamer fly, tiger fish, any of those things. I like a big eye. So
you want panic in that bait fish.
Yeah, and it must be visible. Quite often it's a very small, tiny little eye, and it's not even visible to the fish. There is space in the popper to put quite a big eye on there, and which I did on all the sizes. So the smallest size takes a 6mm eye, which is quite a big eye for that. But the biggest one, the extra large, take a 9.5mm eye. But what I did was to slant the eyes to a little bit to the back and down, so that they are visible from below. Both eyes are visible from below and from behind. So if I put this one there, you can actually see the eye cavities. And then also if you look at it from behind, now there will obviously be a tail and some tail material in the way, but when that is wet and you retrieve it will thin out, and the eyes will from time to time be visible. And it's a big eye. So if you use a proper 3D eye, then it will definitely be visible on this from behind as well. So most of the cone-shaped poppers are made on a lathe. So they'll have a manufacturing hole through the middle of the popper to the back, and most people think that's where the hook must go through, and that is the wrong. That's the worst place you can put the hook through, because as soon as you put the hook through there, you push the popper down, and that closes the gate, and that's just not going to hook the fish. So that was one of my main things is to get that hook in the bottom of the popper. Now another thing is so on the manufactured pieces there will be a little marker on the front and on the back where you need to stick a dubbing needle or something through to create the hole and stick the hook through there. Most guys go and glue the hook the popper onto the hook, then they want to tie the popper, which is also the wrong way around. You want to cover that the thread that you use with the popper head. So the way this is designed is that you tie the tail first, then you glue the head onto the popper, and that is why I created that tail cavity. So you get a better profile in the popper. It's not like tapered down almost to the hook shank, and then you've got the tail popping out. So you tie it. There's a little marker there, that one there, which is also on the bigger one there, you can see, which is molded into the poppers. So that is a marker that when you tie it, you put this on the hook, and you make a little mark with a permanent marker on the hook. And from there backwards, your tail can be exposed. From there forward, you can tie it down. So when you slide the popper over, this tail cavity will line up where the shank stops, that marker actually, and then you've got the tail coming out of the popper, which gives you a much better profile. The front is also most of the poppers, or pretty much all the poppers, you'll find that the hook eye is hidden in the cut face. What I did was to make it a little bit wider and bring it out to the front, so that you can see the hook eye sticking out clearly, and it's more visible and easier to get through.
It's not deep in the cut.
Exactly. The Gnarly Headz will be available in 4 different sizes: a small, medium, large, and an extra large, which will be for bass, anything from bass to GTs. The largest one fits about a 6.0 hook, the smallest one about 2.0, and you can use bass hooks in them as well, obviously for the freshwater. For more information, you can visit gnarlyheadz.com. And then as a second phase, we are working on complete flies, where we will be tying the fully tied popper for guys who don't tie their own flies. Another thing we're working on are the different coatings that can be used. You can airbrush them, you can do all sorts of different things with them, but we are going to make available a DIY coating system for guys who want to do their own kind of coatings, and there's different coatings that can be used.